conservative, constitutional. It's the Andrew Cooperrider Show, keeping you informed on what's going on right here in Kentucky.
And welcome everybody to another amazing day right here on the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Of course, I'm your host, Andrew Cooperrider. And today we're going to talk about the Representative Kulkarni case made its way to the Supreme Court regarding her eligibility to run for and hold office, something that the primary on has already happened, but what's the ramifications of that very strange case? And the Supreme Court's actions on this case leave a little more questions to be asked as well. School choice is heating up here in the Commonwealth as we see the left certainly starting to message more about making sure that they can keep as many kids as they can locked into their indoctrination facilities that has become our public schools, of course. We'll go into that, and we'll have so much more. But first, to those of you tuning in, this is the Andrew Cooperrider Show, the only show in Kentucky that gives you the news specifically and commentary, political commentary from a constitutional and conservative viewpoint right here in Kentucky every single day of the week, Monday through Friday. Well, business week, Monday through Friday. Of course, not on Saturday and Sunday, but only show out there doing this. So feel free to tune in every single day. If you're watching this in the video format, welcome. Now we do an audio format that's available on several radio stations as well as on every podcasting platform. If you want to find out more about that, head on over to theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's theandrewshow.com. You can also reach out to the show by emailing info@theandrewshow.com. Once again, that's info@theandrewshow.com. Without further ado, let's dig down into it. So for those of you who've been listening to the show for past couple of weeks, have heard me hit upon Adam Moore a few times, a Democrat running for the 45th House District against Thomas Jefferson here in Lexington. The 45th House District is about 2/3 Lexington, 1/3 Jessamine County, and it consists of a majority Republican district. It is a pretty closely tied together Republican district, Republican to Democrat registration district. It's not like a huge blowout, but it is more Republican than Democrat. That coupled with the fact that the urban Republicans are a little bit different of a type, and this will end up coming up later on, I think, in today's show, assuming we get to the story. This ends up being a little bit more of a weird thing about urban Republicans are very liberal in their thinkings a lot of times, because I think it has to do with the fact they're just surrounded by Democrats. Their friends are Democrats. Every single business they walk into is a Democrat owned business a lot of times, and will have up the pride flags and parades, and there's tons of things going on. You walk into every single public school here in Lexington, you'll see a pride flag at the front, Black Lives Matter flags. You'll find those in the classrooms and schools a lot of times. I've seen them in there. And so with that in mind, I think it kind of, I don't want to say warps, but in the desire to fit in, I think a lot of the registered R's in the urban areas find themselves to be more moderate than a lot of moderate, I would call them less conservative than a lot of those not in the urban areas. It's just a fact of the matter. But with that in mind, the race seems like in the 45th district, the Democrats think they have a chance there, despite the fact Republican has held that seat for ever Republicans have held that seat. But they think to themselves that, we think this one's in play. This is something we can get to. So Adam Moore's been out there hitting doors, he says, knocking doors, talking to Republicans. He posted this video on his social media. Now, keep in mind, those of you who've listened to the show have heard me talk about Adam Moore a lot, too, as well, dealing with his belonging to the Science of Mind cult that was founded by Ernest Holmes, or at least he says he goes to the Ahava Center in Lexington. Most Sundays, he says he goes there, that it is his regular attending. He doesn't call it a church, but of course, they sing songs, play music, read from books that aren't the Bible, but do stand up and have readings from them. And also, they're led by one Reverend Rainbow. So that sounds a lot like a religion to me. But anyways, and so he does belong to that church cult. He says it's not a cult, the Ahava Center in Lexington. And so we've dug into that, but I want to play for you something he posted online, a little outtake of it's about 2-minute long video he posted where he's talking about knocking doors. Let's take a listen to that.
That whatever your personal views on the topic, patients and doctors should be making healthcare decisions, not politicians. Many of the Republicans I've spoken with have expressed sympathy for the lack of exceptions in Kentucky's current ban that was passed by the Republican legislature, but they are also concerned that abortion is currently being used as a form of birth control. If that's the case, if all of us across party lines want to limit unintended pregnancies, then we need to make contraception available to anyone capable of childbearing.
So that seems like a pretty mundane, straightforward, normal video, okay? That's a kind of a normal campaign video until you really start to listen to it. Obviously, he's talking about abortion, so you'd expect that to kind of be like this middle of the road, not super radical. That's what he's attempting to do, at least with this video, where he's talking about abortion. But, however, what he says is extreme. He is a radical on abortion. He admits in that video that he believes that you should be able to abort a baby up until birth, because never once does he talk about limitations. Actually, at the beginning, he first kind of gaslights you. He's trying to find this middle of the road thing, or at least he's pretending to be middle of the road. He says, no matter your views on the topic, it should be between the mother and the doctor, which obviously is ignoring the entire pro-life side of the views. This is something Democrats do, right? He's trying to strike this moderate phase and say, oh, I'm super moderate. No matter your views, you shouldn't have any opinions. That's what he just said. It's illogical. It's nonsensical. And it's also trivializing abortion down to whether we're talking about Coke or Pepsi. You're not choosing your soft drink. To the pro-life side, a member I'm a part of, we view abortion as murdering a human being. And so when people say, well, no matter your viewpoint, it should be left up to the mother and the doctor. What do you, like literally your only viewpoint there could be, you're okay with abortions up until birth. Okay? Because you're not allowed to have an opinion, basically. If you believe that, oh, no, abortion should stop at 6 weeks. Let's maybe say that's your viewpoint. You're somebody who says, and I'm not going to get down into how you're wrong. Okay. That's not what I want to focus on. What I want to focus on is what he said was either nonsensical, purposely gaslighting, and definitely extreme. Because what that means is you can't pass a law. He doesn't want there to be a law to stop somebody from murdering their child the minute before birth. He doesn't want that at all. Because if you're leaving it up to just between, this is just between the doctor and the mother. The government has no opinion here. You can't, it's just between them. Well, there's all kinds of things in healthcare. Especially, even if you just view abortion as reproductive healthcare, something he tries to claim in this video. Even if you just view that, there's all kinds of things in healthcare that the government evolves itself in and says, you can't do that. And I haven't heard the Democrats yet push for those things to be changed. Right now, in America, euthanasia is not legal. You can't ask a doctor to do medically assisted suicide. Right now, in America, you can't do things, medically speaking, that's not FDA approved. It's not like I should be able to do anything I want to as long as my doctor tells me I can do it. Is that really their viewpoint? Is Adam Moore really for tearing down the FDA? Is he really for opening up and removing all these medical regulations? Is he for removing con laws? It's funny, the same Democrats that say here, oh, this should be between doctor and your patient. It should be all about healthcare rights. At the same time, will not remove certificate of need laws that make hospitals and private providers have to ask permission from the government in order to go ahead and operate here in Kentucky. Ask permission. They're not for getting rid of that. But hey, you want to murder your kids? Well, that's just between you and your doctor. Don't worry about it. No matter your opinion, you should just be okay with baby murder. That's what he just said, but that's not the only thing he said in that video. We'll be covering the rest of that after this short break. You're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back with the Andrew Cooperrider Show. Before the break, we were talking about Adam Moore, Democrat, representative for the 45th District, put out a new video talking about his stances On to abortion that we're digging into. As a reminder, Adam Moore, he's the person who belongs to the Science of Mind cult, or at least attends the Ahava Center, which is a branch of the Science of Mind cult founded by Ernest Holmes in Lexington, Kentucky. He goes to that, he says, most every Sunday. He says it's not a cult because it's not a religion. As I said before the break, they have a Reverend Rainbow that leads them in services every Sunday. Sounds a lot like a religion to me. To give you some idea of just how crazy, by the way, not to digress from the abortion video that we played before the break, that we're going to talk about just a little tiny bit more. Here's one of their events where they hooked electrodes, this cult that this Adam Moore guy running in the 45th district goes to. Here's them connecting electrodes up to plants and plugging that into a synthesizer to create music, and then hosting an event where you come listen to plants play music. And this fits into their religion because they believe that we are all a part of a universal mind, spirit, God, whatever. We're all part of that, the consciousness of God, plants and animals and humans. And so by listening to them play music, they're proving that they have feelings and spirits and beings outside of just being a non-thinking plant, which is what they are. But anyways, getting back though to the topic, so he posted up this video. We were talking about the initial beginning of it. But I do want to hit upon something else he claimed in the video that we looked at. And if you want to check out that video, well, you have to check out, go over to theandrewshow.com, hit the listen now tab, see all the different places where you can listen back in case you missed it. But in the video, he goes on to claim that there is, no matter your viewpoint, you should just let them murder kids. But the concern of Republicans is that abortion's being used as birth control, which, I mean, it is, clearly. I mean, 99% of abortions don't have anything to do with rape or incest, when the common exemptions that you see Democrats trying to lead their charge on, using the victims of rape and incest as political cudgels, as tools to justify the mass slaughter of children. And of course, that's not a pro-life stance, even to say we should be able to kill children who are the product of rape or incest. But despite that, even if you believe that there should be exemptions for that, that's less than 1% of all abortions. 99% are completely done for birth control reasons. Well, Adam in the video can't admit that. So he says, if that is true, he doesn't even accept that point. He just said, if that is true, we should all be for complete and open access to contraception. And this is another move we see liberals take a lot of time in order to run away from their very extreme viewpoints when it comes to abortion specifically. Because they want you to be thinking about something other than, they want to say, oh, look, we all just want less abortions completely. So you know what? We just need more contraception. Let's give more money for contraceptions. Now, there's a reason why they use this line, even in pro-abortion states and states that allow abortion. There's a big reason why they use this line is because they want more funding to Planned Parenthood. Planned Parenthood is known, and even in states, and we saw this recently on the national level, I believe it was Joy Reid had on somebody from Planned Parenthood out in Arkansas, who I believe it was Arkansas, who was upset and angry that the Arkansas Republican legislature had defunded Planned Parenthood in the state, isn't giving them any more money. And they said, that's mean and angry because, you know, we offer contraceptive care, that we're not just abortions. Abortion's already illegal in the state. We're just providing contraceptive care. Obviously, Planned Parenthood is ignoring the fact that they literally take the dollars they bring in from you or I, from the government, to go ahead and politically advocate for abortion reforms. Let's not ignore that is what they do, okay, with that money. So clearly it's not just for that, but regardless. But so they defunded them, and they're like, we provide contraceptions. They don't care about it. And this is a common smoke screen that the Democrats will use when it comes to abortion, contraceptives. As if you can't get things like condoms anywhere. As if they don't have a fishbowl of them at any Planned Parenthood, regardless of what amount of funding they get. As if they don't have quarter dispensers where you put in $1 worth of quarters and you can get contraception. As if they don't have every single drugstore out there where for just a few dollars you can get a contraceptive. as if that doesn't exist. That's what they're claiming, okay? They want you to believe that these people are out here getting abortions as birth control because they have no access to condoms. Are you kidding me? They have plenty of access to those things. They're choosing not to do it. And all you want us to do is dump more money into Planned Parenthood and other nonprofits that do provide some contraceptions while at the same time taking those government funds paid for out of your pocket to advocate against your values. That's what they want you to do. And we can't fall for it. Now, what's funny though is through it's about 2 minutes and 20-second video in total. Through the entire thing, he doesn't actually say woman, the word woman. He's talking about abortion. He doesn't say the word woman one time. He actually said in the video, in case you didn't catch it, anyone capable of childbearing instead of using the word woman. Maybe it's because he can't define it and he doesn't feel comfortable using words he can't define. I don't know. Point of the matter is Adam Moore, as much as he wants to use his folksy Mr. Rogers tone and use euphemisms like, if that is true, and use fake arguments like, well, we should all just want more contraception. That should be what we're talking about, not abortion. Or say, regardless of your viewpoint, you should all agree that that's between a woman and her doctor if she wants to murder her kid. That's between her and her doctor. Why are you interceding here, okay? It's just their freedom of choice, Coke or Pepsi. They're just picking a drink. Why do you care so much? So instead of all that, it's clear from that video we can draw he does not believe on any kind of limitations on abortion because he didn't talk about them. He said that's between a woman and a doctor. 2, he believes that more than just women can have babies. He believes in that ultra extreme far left viewpoint that transgender women, men who say that they're women, claim to be women, are in fact women. And that men and transgender men, women who claim to be men, are in fact men. And so if I say women having children, well, I'm excluding the men that can get pregnant because I believe men can get pregnant because I don't actually believe that there's two genders and I believe that people can switch back and forth. These are extreme viewpoints, no matter how they wrap it up. Staying in the realm of talking about Democrats real quick running for office, Representative Kulkarni, I've been following this case for a while. Fascinating case, where she's facing getting sued off the ballot off her district there in Louisville, 40th House District. The Supreme Court has recently ruled. What's happened in this case is that Representative Kulkarni, when she filed for office, one of her signers, at the time they signed and passed the deadline too, the filing deadline. So at the time of signature and passed the filing deadline, but before it was certified by the Secretary of State, which doesn't actually matter, there's no lines for that in law, she had a Republican sign her signing paperwork. And here in Kentucky, the rules for running for office are simple. You must get 2 signatures from 2 people of the same party that live within your district. And she managed, out of those 2 signatures, to get one of them that is actually a Republican at the time they signed. Now, that person did change their registration after the fact, but when they signed the document that was signed and notarized, they were signing a affidavit that their party registration at that time was, in fact, Democrat, when actually it was Republican. And so when you do those types of things, you end up becoming disqualified for the ballot. That's how it should work. We've seen this case happen in 2022 out in House District 2, where you had Kim Holloway running against Richard Heath, where at the time in 2022, Kim Holloway was disqualified off the ballot because I believe she had an independent, I believe it was, maybe as a Democrat, I think as an independent, sign her paperwork that told her they were Republican, and they just didn't know that they weren't, or they didn't really sign their, I don't know. But she ended up getting disqualified off the ballot. And what happened in that case was that they said your paperwork's no good. You are not eligible to run in this primary. And so Representative Kulkarni, she ends up running with bad paperwork. And so her, a person within the district, a person who priorly ran against her, went ahead and sued her in court saying you're not eligible to be on this ballot because your paperwork is inaccurate. And for some reason that made no sense to me at all. For some reason, the judge there in Louisville the first judge ruled that she's still eligible for the ballot because of the fact that her signer changed the registration after they became aware of the error. And that has no basis in case law at all. That has never been offered as a remedy before. And Kulkarni cooked up this belief that she said that, well, because it was before the Secretary of State filed the paper, it was past filing deadline. She signed the document as a Republican, the signer did, but because it wasn't actually filed until after the filing deadline, or wasn't actually, the signer changed her registration before the Secretary of State had finalized the paperwork, then it was A-okay, nothing to worry about. But that's not what the law says. So the judge rules an error in allowing Kulkarni to stay on the ballot. So it gets appealed, and the appellate court says, no, she's not allowed on the ballot. And the Supreme Court came in and said, we'll hear this case, keep her on the ballot for now, we'll count her votes, but we'll decide on this case after the election because it was running on a tight schedule. So what ended up actually happening when it got to the Supreme Court? Well, we'll be going over that after this short break.
Well, my friends asked Dad, walk down Catarina Mountain, and he asked Silly Heaven be his bride.
That was just a minute there of Chris Stapleton from the 2022 CMA singing You'll Never Leave Harlan Alive with the great, wonderful Patty Loveless. And I did want to share that before I dig back into the story we were talking about real quick. Because one, I find Chris Stapleton to be quite an exceptional artist, and I happened across an interesting post, and I could shoehorn him into a political topic. So I just want to do this real quick. So Linda Gordon gave Chris Stapleton, when he was at the Railbird Festival, I believe he was headlining that, in Lexington, Kentucky, she gave him the key to the city. Now, for those of you who aren't aware, Chris Stapleton was born in Lexington, but he's not from Lexington. He's from Eastern Kentucky, of course. He's not from Lexington. All you people out there, okay, and I'm telling you, I'm a person who lives in Lexington. I'm telling you, this is getting old, okay? Chris Stapleton, just because he was born here, because they had a good hospital and the mom got to it before he was born, doesn't mean he's from Lexington. So stop putting it on his Wikipedia page and stop pretending like he's a Lexingtonian. He's not. Including you, Mayor, because I see on your post you said, oh, he was actually born in Lexington, so here's a key to our city. Stop trying to claim him. He's not ours. Okay, he's not ours. Even if you Google most famous artists from Lexington, Chris Stapleton shows up. Okay? He's not Lexington's. He's Eastern Kentucky's. All right? Give them this, please. Let them have their artists. They produce some fantastic musical talents. Let them have them, okay? Please. Anyways, back to the Kulkarni discussion. So before the break, we were talking about Representative Kulkarni, 40th House District, was sued off the ballot, or was attempted to be sued off the ballot, ended up being sued off the ballot. And the lawsuit started before the election, clearly. She had bad paperwork, as I talked about before the break. And for some reason, the local courts decided to go ahead and let her move forward, even though her paperwork was bad. And then the appellate court said, no, we think her paperwork's bad and she's not eligible. So now the Supreme Court, it's moved up to after the fact, after the election, and they have ruled she is ineligible from the ballot, which is all correct, right? And I have no idea why the local judge got it wrong. This is where it gets weird here, where it just seems like the court in this situation is trying to split the baby. And I think they're just in some odd situations where they've done some things that make no sense at the court levels. And so now they're in an awkward position where do they end up handing over? They feel uncomfortable with the idea that they're going to hand over the election to somebody who didn't even really campaign. Because how this should have worked is the court at the bottom level should have ruled she's ineligible for the ballot. That should have been the proper ruling. Clearly, Supreme Court and Appellate Court both agree with what I just said there. But had a normal court ruled how this has always worked historically, like I said, in 2022, set between Kim Holloway and Richard Heath. And by the way, Kim Holloway beat Richard Heath in 2024. So you can't say that that election would have turned out the same way regardless, because she did beat him. Something to think about. Anyways, she had bad paperwork, exact same situation, and the original court ruled, nope, you're not eligible for the ballot, so she wasn't printed on the ballot, and of course, didn't get appealed, judge ruled in that way. It was a pretty sound hearing. That's what happens. Now, in this situation where the initial judge did rule, and then the appellate court ruled negative in a different direction, the Supreme Court said, we'll hear the case. They printed her name on the ballot anyways. And she received like 85% of the vote. I mean, she beat that guy by like 60, 70 points or so. It was a fair amount of destruction there, that she ended up doing. But they feel uncomfortable handing it off to the guy who only got like 15% of the vote. One William Zeitz, I believe that's his name, William Zeitz. He's the opponent. He did nothing. He raised no money. He didn't campaign at all. She beat him by like 70 points. And they don't want to just hand it to him, I guess. But how it should have worked, how this has always worked in the past, is that if you're disqualified after the filing deadline from running, the other persons or persons, if it's multiple people in the election or just one person, are the only people eligible for the ballot. So they win. Default, they win. They're the only people eligible to receive the Democrat nomination then. This William Zeitz guy. But for some reason, the Supreme Court, as of I'm recording this, they haven't issued their full opinion yet. They have not. They're making it sound like they're going to allow the Democrat Party to involve themselves in like a special election process. So like if after a primary, the candidate who gets elected, let's say, withdraws or dies or something just horrible happens, and so they can't run in the general, that kicks in what's called an inter-party primary, where the Democrat Party, or Republican Party if it's a Republican, but the Democrat Party Executive Committee there in Jefferson County in Louisville will meet and vote just that group of 50 or so, or however many members there are on their actual executive committee. I know there's about 50 or so on the Republican Executive Committee in Jefferson County. They meet and vote on who they want to represent them on the ballot in November. But that's not what happened here. She didn't withdraw. She should have never been on the ballot in the first place. William Zeitz should be the candidate in the general, period. I don't understand why the Supreme Court's going in this direction. It makes no logical sense at all with what the prior casework has been on this. So basically, if you can drag it out long enough and get your name printed on the ballot through the appellates, you don't get the same, the person suing you doesn't get the same remedy they would have gotten if the first court rules in a different direction. What kind of case law is that? That doesn't, it literally, this makes no sense whatsoever. None whatsoever. But yet, here we go. There shouldn't be a special election. It shouldn't be like, we'll have a special election. And then they're saying, we're going to have a special election, we think, but we're not going to let her be eligible to run in that special election. That's what the Supreme Court says. Why would she not be eligible to run in it? If they're going to have a special election because she got disqualified by the courts, why would she not be eligible? None of this makes any sense. Either William Zeitz is the nominee, or you're going to say there should be a new election, but that doesn't make sense. That isn't how this has ever been done historically. I think they're just in a position where they don't want to hand this off to just some name that was thrown on a ballot, but that's the position they're in. That's what the law has clearly indicated up to this point. I would love to hear how they end up justifying that move if they end up trying to say that the party now gets to come in and have a special decision. I'd love to see that. Speaking of Democrats going crazy here, school choice heating up. Amendment 2 on the ballot to allow school choice. What's going on with that? What's the decision? What is the actual vote that's taking place? What are the Democrats arguing? And honestly, we've seen a fair amount of cringe already. Cringe, such a dumb word. A fair amount of cringy behavior out of both sides now as we're going into the school choice area. We'll have that after this short break. I do think this Amendment 2 is very important. I want to go into, because the other side, which is going to be the Democrats, of course, it's going to be conservative versus Democrat. That's what it's going to end up being for the most part. The other side has cooked up some really odd arguments that don't make a lot of sense. So we'll go into what we're actually voting on, what the arguments are, or what the main argument is that they're trying to use, and then also we'll go over the cringy stuff. After this short break, you're listening to the Andrew Cooperrider Show. And you're back here in this final segment of the Andrew Cooperrider Show. So school choice ballot will be coming up this November. Amendment 2 on the ballot. Should vote yes for it. Just say that at the top before we dig down into it. But what is it saying exactly? And now the Democrats and liberals out there and pro-government indoctrination camp will tell you that this is all about vouchers and this super long point about how vouchers are somehow bad, and if money follows the kid, which is around $4,500 or so a year, if the state actually starts cutting a $4,500 check a year to each parent to decide to go to what school they want to go to with that money, that this will just rob public schools of all kinds of funding, and they'll be just going down the pipe, despite that's not accurate, or they'll make claims about how this only helps rich kids and not poor kids, or whatever claims they want to make, but what you're not actually voting on is a policy. They're going to try to make it about policy, because what it's really about, what the amendment's actually about, is about us as a legislature, not us, I'm not in the legislature, but the legislature, who is the voice of the people. So that's what I mean by us. Us, the people, through our representatives up in Frankfurt, get to even have the discussion, because the Supreme Court has ruled we cannot have school choice of any kind or type according to the state constitution. They have cooked up some beliefs in our state constitution that we can't get educational savings accounts, we can't get vouchers if we wanted that, we can't have a funding system that makes sense for charter schools. We're not allowed to do any of those things at all without first changing our state constitution. So before we can even have a discussion, and you're going to hear all kinds of dumb arguments. The most common one from the anti-choice side, the ones who don't want you having school choice, is that, well, you don't want public dollars funding private schools, which is just an absolutely ridiculous argument. There is no part else of government that operates this way. Not to mention you have KEYS and FAFSA. I mean, KEYS is our state college money, FAFSA at the federal level. Both those are allowed to go to private universities. Those are public dollars going to private schools. And let's not forget, when Bashir was pitching his universal pre-K this budget year, he wanted to create a voucher system for the preschools to use to send your kids to private preschools on the public dime. It seems like it's only when it comes to K through 12 education that becomes the problem. And it's because a large funding source, obviously the Democrat Party, comes from, one, the teachers unions, which collect money off that being as big as possible, and then two, the administrative and government state, especially in some of these large liberal places, are overrun with liberals. And we know this because they've been using it as an opportunity to push their indoctrination and beliefs into the minds of children sitting before them constantly. They always have the opportunity to have sat there and done this. And so it's obvious that this is not just about schooling. This is about their politics and funding their political bottom line and getting to take control of your kids. They want control of your kids. There's no other good reason to do that. Now, both sides are firing up for the campaign. The Democrats here are firing up a bit more on the grassroots side of things. Why? Because, well, frankly, the Republicans, establishment especially, there's like this weird divide. So you got the group who has the money, we'll call them the country club establishment Republicans, and then you have the groups that they have some money, but what they mainly provide are volunteers, grassroots efforts, people willing to work for free because they believe in a cause. These people are doing it more for social stature, you find a lot of times, or they make profit off the government. They're not donators, they're investors. But this side is doing it because they believe in the cause, and they're led by grassroots leader, and Republican establishment as a whole hates their grassroots, pushes them away. They want nothing to do with them. They hire consultants and people to work on these types of activities like getting Amendment 2 passed that don't know the first thing about running a grassroots organization, that aren't even on good terms with grassroots people, don't even have their phone numbers, and then they wonder why these types of things fail. They just won't engage their grassroots on these important issues. But putting that to the side, both sides are kind of firing up, and both sides are putting up some pretty high levels of cringy type behavior. First from the left, let's take a watch at a TikTok video they posted. So for those of you who couldn't see, you're lucky. The rest of us did have to watch that. It's basically about three, I'd say probably 50-year-old women or so, right around 50-year-old women shooting a TikTok video where they're wearing some of the most ridiculous things. Of course, rainbow glasses and everything else. And of course, it's exactly the people you want representing the pro-public school side of things. The absolute craziest looking people out there. It's extremely cringy, extremely awful to watch. It's definitely interesting. And honestly, you could have done more to help Amendment 2 by actually knocking a door with that time, or if you actually want to defeat it, by knocking a door at that time, than to shoot imagine too being like a door they're about to knock on, because that was recorded in the middle of just like a neighborhood. So like you're looking out your window, somebody's about to come knock on your door, and you're just seeing these like three like 50-year-old liberal white ladies in the middle of the day with a phone in the grass, doing dances with clipboards and rainbow glasses and just the worst kinds of outfits. It's just obviously a completely ridiculous people. But the right isn't free from cringe either. I've actually taken some steps to make this less cringy. I've regulated the volumes a bit better. This is an outtake that was taken where Amanda Mays Bledsoe, senator, was facing up against Lindsey Burke on Red, White, and Bluegrass, a show on local TV here in Lexington. And they had like a little bit of a talk about school choice. And don't get me wrong, Amanda Mays Bledsoe says a good line, fantastic line, great line, worth sharing, worth mentioning, worth talking about. But somehow the Republican establishment, who just doesn't do this at all very well, they're just not good at realizing how to connect with their base, connect with their grassroots. It's like they're up in an ivory tower and they don't understand why the establishment House reps keep losing like they do, and that the Liberty Republicans, quote unquote, or conservative Republicans as I call them, not only do they all hold on to their seats and win by a lot, but they're able to take down two of your incumbents. It's just, it's inexplicable to them, and it's pretty clear why they're not getting it when they put out videos like this. I'm going to play this. Amanda Mays Bledsoe is making a point here, good point, but the editing and the music work here, outside of improving it to make it more listenable, not done by me, done by the establishment Republicans. Let's take a listen here.
Put in more resources to K-12 than we have since CARA. I mean, a significant investment by the Republican Party to do so. If we were interested in somehow dismantling or not having a robust public school education, we wouldn't have done that. We wouldn't have been interested in doing that. And once you put in health care benefits and pension, we're well above inflation.
I agree that we did better this year. I don't know that I agree that we have outpaced inflation. I actually suggested on the floor of the House that instead of $1,500 per student, we should have looked at $2,000 per student, because I think that's what would have really put us into a competitive place so that we could attract teachers instead of losing teachers, because we're seeing them go to Indiana, we're seeing them go to Ohio, we're seeing them go to Tennessee.
And yet every one of the states you just mentioned and everyone around us has some version of school choice.
So it was a good comment. Don't get me wrong at all. Don't get me wrong at all. And cutting it up with that music, it's fine. I think probably okay. You're going to want to play it up. Obviously, you want to play up the comments and play up that Democrats don't know what they're talking about, because you have this campaign for school choice going on. That's obviously very important. But the comments going along with this are just, they're calling her the notorious A&B, Amanda Mays Bledsoe, notorious A&B, and talking about, they started a GoFundMe for a new mic after that mic drop she just completed. Like, that's like the Republican establishment saying this. There's some shuffling going on with leadership in the Senate, and I think they're trying to boost her up there because they're trying to gather some votes for her caucus, for her to take a leadership role. Because Thayer has made it pretty clear he wants Julie Rocky Adams to flip over to majority Florida leader. Julie Rocky Adams is the majority caucus leader, so then that'd push Bledsoe up into that position. I would have to think, or somebody up in a rotation of positions, I'd have to think that's what's going on here, because this is pretty good comment, but not worth some of these comments of the notorious A&B. Like, Amanda Mays Bledsoe was a councilwoman here in Lexington before she was a state senator. And I have never heard of Amanda Mays Bledsoe called A and B before. So to be notorious A and B, I probably should have heard you called A and B before. First thing. Second thing, I've never heard of Amanda Mays Bledsoe being particularly well known for good mic drop moments or moments like these. It's never happened. Anyways, well, y'all, that's what we have time for today. We'll see you back here tomorrow. If you're watching this on WBNA, head on over to theandrewshow.com, hit the Listen Now tab to see where you can listen to this every day, Monday through Friday, every day of the week, well, work week. Until next time, we'll be seeing you.